Hey, Janice.
Hey, Anthony.
Let's talk about how to avoid ripoffs during the probate process. This is kind of a downer because it's really sad to watch when our clients are just getting ripped off left and right during the probate process. Let's do this episode to hopefully help them and help any future clients try to avoid getting taken during this sort of hectic and emotional period. Yeah.
Absolutely. I love that idea. Let's show people how not to. So, today we will discuss examples of ripoffs during probate, comparison shopping, asking for referrals, choosing an experienced probate attorney, and hiring a professional executor.
Cool. So we're going to start off with some examples, and then we have four sort of tips on how to avoid, hopefully, getting ripped off. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. All right. So let's get started. So first, some examples, and these are real world examples from our clients. And if anyone who's wondering, like Anthony and Janice, why are you letting your clients get ripped off?
Well,
The answer is that we're not,
letting.
letting, but rather we have clients. Some clients are sort of more, take charge, and they sort of jump jump headfirst into the process before asking us, or they just do, they start hiring folks or paying bills before they ask us, and things have just already happened by the time we find out about them. So
Yeah,
that's
day late and a
what's
dollar
going on.
short, right?
Yeah, yeah. All right. So some of the more common examples, and these are just a few, by the way. There's a lot of examples, but a few examples of how ripoffs happen during probate. So number one, the funeral bill. This one is just kind of, to me, just kind of feels gross. But look, I've been doing this a long time. We've seen hundreds of estates. A very very tasteful and funeral, not too extravagant but not too modest, can be definitely under $10,000, right? Like for sure.
Definitely. Yes.
Okay. In fact, if you want to go cremation and have a very very austere funeral with just a church service and whatnot, it could be under like $2,000 or $3,000, right?
Absolutely.
But we have seen funeral bills in the $25,000 range, in the $40,000 range, and I've seen as high as $50,000 for a funeral. I mean, that's nuts.
Wow.
That's a year of college. That's a lot of things.
That's a lot. That's like two vehicles that you said college.
Yeah.
Wow.
And again, I'm not talking about an Amadeus Mozart pauper's grave, but you can have a very very reasonable funeral, or I guess final remains setup for what you could actually have a direct cremation with no funeral service for $400, 400, right? If that's all you wanted. If you want to have some sort of, what you're paying for are wooden boxes, overpriced flowers, and probably overpriced catering. That's really what's
Yeah,
going on
exactly.
here.
Right, right. So why do you find it so high? Is it because maybe you're dealing with emotions and they're not making decisions financially, but more with their brain and their heart? Or why do you find that sometimes they're so high?
I mean, the cynic in me tells me that when there's an opportunity, in a free market system, folks will, take advantage, meaning the folks who are selling these services.
Right, right.
And yeah, when emotions are high and there is a time crunch. I mean, when there is a deceased person, there is a time factor in getting these remains, dealt with, just because of, God, I don't want to say it, but like decomposition, right? So you
Right.
need,
No,
things have to be done.
yeah, it has to be done rather quickly.
So there's a bit of a time crunch plus emotion plus and whatnot. But just please, 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 anything above ten, even $15,000, just really start looking at the line items, and just question, like, really, like, why is this wreath $2,000? Like stuff like that.
Oh, ouch. Yeah.
All right, another example of ripoffs during probate is the clean out. So when somebody passes away, whether they were renting or a homeowner, the apartment or the residence needs to be cleaned out usually. And yes, often the family does it if everyone's living nearby and they have time to sort of, kind of walk down memory lane while slowly, passing out personal items. But that's not always the case. If you have somebody who died here in New York, but everyone, all the heirs are from other parts of the country or something, then it becomes like a project where you have to fly in and take care of it, right? And you have like 5 days or 3 days, however many days you're able to take off from work to take care of this. Let's call it a move, right? You're moving,
Yeah. You're
except not to
moving.
another house, to the dump, pretty much. So, oh gosh, this is so frustrating. Think about it. How much do you think Janice, when was the last time you moved? How much should a move cost? You know?
Oh, well, that's a great question. I can tell you that we will never move again without movers, regardless of whatever the price is.
Right.
Because just moving alone is so hard and time consuming. It took weeks. You box and you move, and yeah. But I'm not sure how much it would actually cost for movers. But I can't imagine it's cheap.
Sure. So look, in New York, for like let's use the standard of a 1-bedroom apartment, condo or co-op. If you were moving, you could get it done for like $1,000, right? I think there's flat rate movers and 2 guys in a van and things like that. I'm giving free promotions to these guys. I don't know that. I have never used those services, so
I've seen the signs. Yeah.
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 So, it can definitely get done for $1,000. Okay, fine. So if you have a decedent's estate and there's some other issues, maybe $2,000, maybe $3,000. We recently had a very, very nice client of ours got taken for $8,000 to move out of a 1-bedroom apartment. I mean, that's just not cool.
Like to take the stuff and not store it anywhere. They're taking it, removing it, and whether they're selling it or throwing it away.
Exactly. So they probably double dipped. They charged our client $8,000, and they're probably selling or consigning what they took and making a profit off that as well.
Exactly.
So it's super frustrating.
There's no way
to watch
they threw it all out.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So last example, and I feel like I'm beating a dead horse because it's all kind of the same example where somebody who doesn't kind of know any better and has a bit of a time crunch and an emotional situation is kind of being preyed on. But last example is, and this is the most absurd one, that's why I saved it for last, is so when you have a house that you want to put up for sale and it's not in great shape, you sometimes hire what are called stagers. Have you ever heard of that before, Janice?
Well, so I know where this is coming from in our world. It's the HGTV. Anytime they have right? I don't know if you watch it, but I do religiously. Anytime they're getting ready to sell this house they built or redid, they stage it. It's almost like it's expected and common. I mean, it's not real world, it's TV world. But if that's all you watch, you think that you need to stage.
I still don't understand why. The amount of money you spend on the staging would have to necessarily increase the purchase price that you get, right? The offers that you get to make it,
right,
an ROI, a positive ROI. But how will you ever know, right? It's not like you're selling 2 identical houses, one that you staged and one you didn't stage.
Right, exactly.
And so I kind of have a similar mindset with renovations. We get a lot of estate properties that have, they've been lived in, they're a little older, and if you redid the roof, you could sell it for $10,000 more, but it costs $10,000 to redo the roof. So like, what's the point? You're net even.
Right. Like, wait a minute.
So I kind of don't get the rationale in general, but okay, let's assume that staging is as a principle makes sense. How much should you spend on staging? And we're going to again use the example of a 1-bedroom apartment in Manhattan. So that's about, anywhere from 700 to 900 square feet. What would you say? How much should staging cost for that amount of space? Yeah.
And well, it's a trick question because I know how much it costs and it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
If you were to say realistically, maybe a couple $100 you could stomach, right? Maybe, I mean, if they said a couple $100, we'll put a couple pieces of nice furniture and move on. But I know that's not the case.
So I've asked our friend Maggie Ross, who's a realtor that we work with often, who I absolutely trust and recommend. And she said, look, if you're going to go high end with a designer, you could be spending, $4,000, maybe $5,000 to stage a 1-bedroom apartment. So that number alone astonishes me because I don't think all the furniture that my family owns costs $5,000.
Right. That's what I'm thinking too. So you're showing people a beautiful furnished apartment that costs $5,000 to show them that, but they're not getting the furniture.
Yeah, right.
They're just going to get an empty piece of house. I don't know. It's so confusing to me.
Anyway, so $5,000 I already think is overpriced. I mean, I'm exposing my miserly ways here, but whatever. But our another good client of ours, who again really nice guy, but I'm afraid I think he's gotten taken. You ready for the drum roll here, Janice?
My goodness, go ahead.
Yeah, he's contracted to stage a 1-bedroom apartment in Manhattan for $13,000.
Wow.
I don't think
Please tell me it's worth like millions or something. I don't even know.
I mean, anything in Manhattan will be worth at least like right around $1 million, but
13,000.
So there's So what's a 1-bedroom? So a living room, what do you call it? A bedroom, a kitchen, and a bath. So that's 4 rooms, let's say, right? So you're spending $3,000 and change per room. Like what? On what? I don't understand.
What could you put in a kitchen? Like maybe a couple of knickknacks on the counter. I mean, Right? I mean, like, how big could a kitchen in Manhattan, one
I don't.
bedroom be? I don't know. Wow,
So it's definitely opportunistic, I would say. And okay,
yes.
so again, I'm like beating a dead horse. Let's move on and talk about how to avoid this, how to avoid. So right there, by the way, you're talking potentially between an overpriced funeral, clean out, and staging. Just using those three examples. There's many others, but you're talking. You're probably out or having overpaid tens, if not, tens of thousands of dollars. So this is serious money. We're not talking
That's
about nickels and dimes here. Yeah.
no, that's an incredible amount.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so let's move on to our tips on how to avoid this for you, and then when you know who's in the situation. Number one, just comparison shop, just like anything else in life. I know you're in a time crunch. I know it's an emotional, but you need to do some comparison shopping. Don't just go with the funeral guy who I don't know how to put this, but do some price shopping. I mean, you probably spend 5 hours choosing between toaster A and toaster B. I mean, please put at least that much effort into these decisions.
Right. And know that there are more than just one funeral places out there. You may have just grabbed the first one that you saw, but there's probably a lot more than just that one.
Yeah. So the problem, I mean, this is definitely a necessary first step, but there are drawbacks or problems with this step. And the problem is you don't know what you don't know, right? So even anybody who's researching something cold is just almost like, your starting off point is so far back, it's just tough. So Janice, if I told you right now I need you to help me find the best price for, let's say, a strip mall's reinsurance policy, just for example.
Right.
I mean, you could start Googling that, but
you're starting from nothing. Like I'd have to just start from the beginning with, looking at what the words are that you said. I mean, but you are starting from scratch.
Right. And I don't mean to imply that people don't know what funeral prices are or funeral is, and that's the dangerous part. People think they know because they've been to a funeral or they've seen staging on the Home Shopping Network or whatever you said.
Yeah.
There's a lot of sort of ins, outs, and pros and cons to these things and situations where they're merited and not. So again, you don't know what you don't know. So also, it's not just about price. And this falls into that category of not knowing what you don't know. There are some things that you should be spending money on. And there are some things that you probably, could completely do without. So, the cliche of you get what you pay for versus, why pay for something you don't need to pay for.
Right.
Right. All right. So moving on. Another way to help avoid getting ripped off during probate is to ask for referrals. So, I mean, this applies to a lot of things in life. Would you agree, Janice, that you want to ask friends and families? Yeah.
Absolutely. Especially in the world that we live in with Facebook, for example. If I need a new hairdresser, I just put on there, okay, hey, local people, new hairdresser, give me some ideas, pros and cons. I mean, you can get your friends and family to definitely give you ideas.
So that strategy works very well for sort of everyday things, like you said, like a hairdresser,
like hair, right.
Plumber or whatever, because you're asking people who know you, who are probably like-minded, who probably expect the same level of service or are in the same sort of realm of budget. That's why that usually works. However, it doesn't really work in this situation because these are usually services that people only use once or twice in their entire lives, for the most part, right?
Correct.
So just because your friend thought they had a good experience with a funeral home or a stager, that may have been the only funeral they've ever prepared or the only staging they've ever done. And I'm just using those examples. And it may just mean that they got ripped off and they're helping you get ripped off too.
So now you're both ripped off. Okay.
Yeah. So how does that help anyone? It's not like, I mean, if you're asking a friend who is professional and, stages a lot of properties, that makes a lot of sense for sure.
Sure.
But if you're asking that person who's gone through one grandmother's probate on how to do it, like, maybe the depth of knowledge is not there,
Yeah, to think of it that way. Now you're both up a creek, but yeah.
Yeah, right. All right. So the next tip is to choose an experienced probate attorney, and I guess I'm emphasizing both those words, experienced,
yes,
and probate, because you don't want a jack of all trades, right? Not in this area. I mean, in most areas, would you agree with? Because Janice, you support a lot of attorneys. Would you agree that
I do.
In this day and age? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, I do agree with you. I do think that a lot of people try to, put their hands in different pots, different trades, if you will. But this is so specific, the probate. And experience is so important. I do find that finding an experienced probate attorney is so, so important.
And when we say that, I mean, you can even distinguish between a will attorney and a probate attorney.
Yes.
And what I mean by that is there are folks, very, very good attorneys who do planning and who will hold your hand through the process of naming your executor and your guardians, but they've never actually, wound down the affairs once somebody's died. Like they are with the living.
Right. Right. And they're really good at it, and that's great.
Sure.
But you probably would find somebody who's done the probate portion, and that would, generally what they do and what they focus on.
Yeah. And even within the probate subcategory, there's even a further subcategory of probate litigators versus estate tax specialists versus, et cetera, et cetera. What you really want is, for this type of situation, to avoid getting ripped off with vendors and such, is you want somebody who's good at probate estate administration, the people who actually take care of collecting assets, paying bills, paying taxes, all that. And that's actually what we do. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So the only drawback of this approach, or this tip, I guess, is that even the best attorney does not have full skin in the game, right? They are an advisor, but there's not such personal drawback if their advice is wrong.
Right.
Right. It's like, oh, I told, hey, attorney B, you recommended this, apartment stager to me, and I think it's overpriced. Like, I did my best. And I stand by my advice, So the downside is not tremendous there. Yeah.
Right. Right.
And that brings me to my final tip on how to avoid just getting ripped in probate is to consider hiring a professional executor. This is distinct from your attorney in that your professional executor is the one who is personally liable for all the decisions, purchases, and payments as the executor for the estate. So that is what I would call CYA to the max.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whatever advice I give as a professional executor, I'm backing that up with my personal bank account.
Yeah.
So I take those decisions very seriously.
Yeah, right. No pressure. It's fine.
So I know a lot of people don't know about this role or about this service out there, and it's just kind of a lot of people think it's only for wealthy people. That's not the case. We serve all ranges of estates.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So the bad example that I like to give so people can understand is the wedding planner.
Yes.
So what? Would you agree, Janice? Like a generation ago, pretty much everyone planned their own weddings. Is that
they
fair
did?
To say?
Yeah, we're in a different world now. But I was in that phase where we didn't have a wedding planner. We had like a wedding coordinator who helped a little bit. But now it's full blown wedding planner. You have to have someone who does everything.
I mean, it feels like the inflection point was that people just realized, like, I want to enjoy my wedding, and I want to be. Let's put it this way: I want to feel the emotions and enjoy my family during this emotional time, and not have to deal with the nitty gritty. I'd rather pay somebody to do that.
Right.
It's a very, very similar, even though again I acknowledge this is a terrible analogy.
but I see what you're saying. I mean, there's just someone who just does it all and just makes it happen.
And then you can actually just focus on grieving, spending time with your family. Because, I mean, at a certain stage in life, do you agree there's, like, the big family gatherings are almost all births, weddings, and funerals, right?
I think that about sums up all of our most recent contacts. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So you don't want to be at the funeral. Yeah, you don't want to be at the funeral trying to get waiver forms or, collect a bill from a cousin. I mean, you want to just be there as a family member, right? So.
Right. And we've talked so much in other podcasts about, you're in the middle of such a heated time. Everybody's emotional and, no animosity. Just a professional executor is that third party that has nothing to do with the family.
Yeah. All right. So I think that's all I have for this, Janice.
So in talking about this executor, check out Anthony's book, How to Hire an Executor, available on Amazon. Definitely has more in-depth information about this professional executorship that you're talking about. And I think that's it. So we'll talk next time.
Cool. Thanks, Janice. Thanks. I hope we helped somebody avoid just getting taken on one of these probate bills. Yeah.
That would be really nice. Just listen. Yeah.
Please. All right. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Janice. Take care.